This is Dish and Dirt with Gary Pickren, South Carolina's only podcast dedicated to the real estate agent craft. And now, the host of Dish and Dirt, Gary Pickren.
And greetings and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Dish and Dirt. I'm your often opinionated, rarely wrong host, Gary Pickren, coming to you from the beautiful downtown offices of Blair, Cato, Pickren, Castleline. This, the third week of August 2025. And yes, this is also the 1-year anniversary of the implementation of the Sitzer Burnett settlement. So congratulations are in order. You actually survived 1 year of post-Sitzer Burnett. And as your highly trained, highly skilled real estate podcast host today, I'm going to give you the truth about the Sitzer Burnett settlement implementation and talk about a lot of the things and say some things that you probably won't hear or read anywhere else, because I respect you enough to tell you like it really is, the truth about how the Sitzer Burnett case and its implementation of the settlement has affected you. A lot of it's good. Some of it's really, really stupid, but we're going to tell you the truth because that's what I do. So let's talk, before we begin with Sitzer Burnett, about another anniversary I do want to recognize. August 15th was the third anniversary of the passing of our founder of this law firm and partner and wonderful friend, Rex Castleline. Rarely a day goes by in this law firm that we don't make a comment or a joke about Rex or talk about Rex. Rarely a day goes by in my life that I don't think about Rex and what he meant to everyone in this industry. Rex was one of the best real estate attorneys I've ever known. He also was one of the greatest people I have ever known. He was a solid human being, always there to lend a hand in support. I guarantee you there's tons of people listening to this podcast today who Rex touched in many wonderful ways and provided support for you in many ways and never asked for any recognition or anything back for doing so. Rex did have such an effect on me as well as so many people, and he's greatly missed. I also heard some very sad news this weekend that Fred Reichert had passed away. Fred Reichert was one of the greatest brokers in charges of my career. He worked at Russell Jeffcoat, two-notch office, the Northeast office. Fred Reichert was always very positive, always so supportive of not only the agents he worked with, but also the support staff and even people such as lawyers and lenders he liked. And Fred did everything to promote the real estate industry and to promote those that he worked with. He was just always a wonderful person, always had a smile on his face, always, it was just a joy to be around. He always had a lot of laughter when you were around Fred. And again, he was one of the greatest in this industry, and he will be greatly missed. And I also would be remiss if I didn't recognize the passing of Troy Ott. While I was not good friends with Troy Ott, Troy did work in the real estate industry for many years. He is a father and a husband, and he will be missed by his friends. And we offer our sympathies to his friends and family. So congratulations once again. It has been 1 year since the implementation of this notorious Sitzer Burnett case and all the rules that came along with it. And no, the sky did not fall. Realtors, real estate agents didn't go away. You didn't go out of business. Buyers agents didn't cease to be. That was one of the big things, is no one's going to represent a buyer anymore. That certainly didn't happen. Agents did not refuse to work with buyers, as many of you proclaimed. I remember many of you calling me or emailing me saying, I'm never going to work with a buyer again. I can't guarantee to get paid, so I'm only going to do listings. Screw the buyers. None of that happened. Buyers still pay you. You still get paid a lot, and mostly through the seller, through the listing. And nothing's really changed there. You're not working for free. Not advertising your commissions or concessions on the MLS didn't put you at a strategical disadvantage from anybody else. Everybody's on the same playing field, so it didn't change anything for you. Agents thought if they couldn't advertise commissions, somehow it was going to be the end of them. They were trying to come up with all these creative ways of trying to get it out there, and it didn't really matter in the end because no one's looking to the MLS for commissions. No one's looking to your advertising commissions. It's no longer binding. It just reminds me back of the day when Al Gore invented the internet. I know that's a joke, but he actually said that in a presidential debate. But back when Al Gore invented the internet, everybody in real estate was up in arms. It was going to be the end of our industry. No one would be able to sell real estate again. They don't need us anymore because if the information's out there, then everybody can get it because all we are is gatekeepers of information. But those who pivoted back then excelled, and we can look at the multiple listing service and see those that pivoted because we can take the top agents and those who remain top agents. They pivoted. They accepted the internet. They embraced the internet. They created websites. They got into SEOs. Those who fought it and said, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. It's going to be the end of us. It actually was the end of you because you didn't embrace it and you went away. But what happened in the end was it didn't end your business. It made your business better. You actually excelled in business. And in fact, it was the greatest thing to ever happen in real estate. The internet took you from marketing in your community with limited dollars and now allowed you to market worldwide with those same limited dollars. You can market all over the world your services, the houses you had for sale, and so forth. Whether a consumer was in Ohio or Indiana or Illinois, they could find you and they could work with you. Prior to Sitzer Burnett, that did not happen. They could not find you because you did not have the money, the resources to get your marketing out outside of your own community. So the internet, in fact, was the greatest thing that ever happened. Now, I'm not saying that Sitzer Burnett is the greatest thing to ever happen to real estate. It's far from it. But in fact, there's a lot of good components of Sitzer Burnett that actually make Sitzer Burnett not terrible. Some things in Sitzer Burnett sucked and were really just stupid. But overall, I think there's some really good things that came out of Sitzer Burnett. And we're going to talk today about some of the agents that I've talked with who have told me they're actually doing better under Sitzer Burnett than they did prior. But here's the problem. We still have a lot of agents out there fighting the change. They want to adapt. They're not going to adapt. They continue to argue about how commissions need to be in the MLS, how commissions need to be set in stone, and none of that is true. And either they can continue to fight this, they can continue to whine, or they can make the change. But they've got to recognize that if no one can put commissions, if no one can put sessions in the MLS, you're still on the same level playing ground than you were before when you could put it in there. It would be one thing if you were the one person who couldn't put concessions or commissions in the MLS and everybody else could, but nobody can. Everyone's still on the same level playing ground, so it hasn't hurt you at all. The choice is either you can adapt like everybody did when the internet came in, or you can continue to fight it and be like those who didn't adjust when the internet came to being, and you can go away. The choice is yours. It's been a year, and you can either adapt or you can go by the wayside. Let's look back at 1 year. Let's look at this article from Real Estate News. It says, in the immediate aftermath of the verdict, the first of dozens of copycat lawsuits were filed. Well, we know that to be true. It happened here in South Carolina. And in the following months, a wave of settlement agreements eventually put the pool of damages at more than $1 billion. Mind-blowing that somehow this became a $1 billion case, considering that the whole purpose of the case allegedly was to effectuate change in real estate. So if that was what we were doing, why did we need $1 billion in damages? We didn't need these kind of numbers. We just needed to get the changes done, but that's not what it's about. So when Catchmark tries to act like he's done something heroic or magnanimous, know that he's full of crap. He did it for the money. Bottom line, if there was no money, he wouldn't have done it. He just still doesn't understand real estate. He didn't understand real estate there. He looked at an opportunity to make money and he succeeded. Now, according to this article, during that time, the National Association of Realtors navigated unexpected shifts in leadership. That was due to the sexual harassment case, not due to this lawsuit. And after vowing to appeal, ultimately decided to settle, paying $418 million and agreeing to significant practice changes. Again, if Catchmark was truthful and this was all about the practice changes, he didn't need the $418 million. But he did because he needs money to buy Epstein's Island or something like that. The verdict also caught the attention of those outside the industry. The mainstream media latched onto the topic of real estate commissions, though not all media outlets got it right, claimed NAR. Well, how was that a surprise? When has the media gotten anything right in the last 10 years? The media is about the most dishonest thing there is in the world. Pretty much anything you read in the media, you're probably better off reading it on the internet. The internet's probably more truthful than the media these days. So that's no surprise. But perhaps encouraging more consumers to negotiate agent pay. So the media wants to think that they created some great change in the real estate. They didn't create anything. All they did was continue to make up stuff about real estate agents and commissions and get it completely wrong. And they've end the article by saying more than 600,000 claims have already been filed by home sellers looking to collect their piece of the settlement fund. Well, at the end of the day, they'll all get like $11. Of course, Catchmark gets hundreds of million dollars. I've heard his take of this is around $500 million, but most people in the settlement will get less than $100. So what did the media get wrong? Well, they got a lot wrong. First and foremost, they claimed that prices would fall. This was one of the big things that Catchmark said, that if he was to prevail, that the price of houses would fall. That has not happened. Hasn't happened at all. In the last year, prices have risen greatly. To the extent that houses have retreated at all, has nothing to do with the settlement, has everything to do with the economic factors. So for him to try to claim that prices fell because of anything that he did is absolutely nuts. Catchmark did nothing to lower these prices. Catchmark and the media also claimed that commissions would collapse. So there would be this resetting of commissions and that it would go away. Well, the fact is they haven't. I know you guys locally have told me multiple times your commissions haven't gone down at all. In fact, your commissions have probably gone up. And according to NAR studies, what we have actually seen is commissions for the most part have gone up, except for one price point. That's over $1 million. People selling a house that's over $1 million, their prices have actually gone down. Everybody else under $1 million, for the most part, their prices have been flat or have gone up. Congratulations and a slow clap for Michael Ketchmark, man of the people, out there helping rich people sell houses for less money while the rest of the middle class people get screwed. In fact, those commissions were already falling for houses over $1 million. You can watch $1 million listing, go back 10 years ago when they would show the price of the house and potential commissions, and look at the price of the house and potential commissions now, and you can see they are greatly reduced from what they were. That's a marketplace push down, has nothing to do with this lawsuit or anything that Ketchmark came up with. The third thing that did not happen that the media and Ketchmark would have you believe was the Realtors Association would die and go away. It absolutely did not. They tried to create some other association. I haven't seen much about that now in 6 months. I think that's pretty much gone nowhere. But the Realtors Association is still very strong and very viable. The local associations are very good. The state association has done an outstanding job of navigating through this. And they were dealt this bad deal. They were basically said, here's the deal. You tell everybody how to implement. NAR didn't really give everybody a bunch of rules. And so the local associations had to take all these rules, try to figure it out. And we've all had to pivot and adjust. There were things that were said, like commissions can't be in the contract. It was against the settlement. That turned out not to be true. And now we have commissions in the contract. So things have changed, and we all had to make adaptations and pivot some because we weren't fully aware of what we were dealing with. But those changes have been made, and everything is better now. But you understand that still the Realtors Association is the only real support you have in Washington, D.C. and at the State House in Columbia. They're the ones out there still fighting to keep you as an independent contractor in Washington, D.C. They're still out there fighting at the State House, trying to get rid of the NV Realty type 40-year recorded listings that were so onerous that the courts have set those aside. They've gotten rid of wholesaling. They've gotten rid of a lot of things that were directly impacting your business. So without the Realtors Association on the state level and national level, where would you be? Now let's look at some of the dumb stuff that came out of this settlement. The biggest and stupidest thing to come out of the settlement was this stupid touring agreement. And when we talk about the touring agreement, this was a document where they said you had to get it signed before a buyer could sign a house that set out what you were going to do and what your commission rates were. And they said that, once you agree to these commission rates, you could never change it. If your consumer wanted to look at a house and you weren't going to charge them just to look at a house and provide customer service, claim was you were stuck with that commission rate forever. And we found out that not to be true. You can adjust your commission rates if you provide additional services. But what we did here in South Carolina is we looked at that document as kind of stupid. And the Realtors Association, State Association, and their attorneys got together with the Real Estate Commission, and we fixed that because in South Carolina, we already had a document called the South Carolina Brokerage Relationship Disclosure Form. And what we did is we went with the association and we looked at what was required in the touring agreement, and we added that language into the disclosure agreement. And then we opined that South Carolina law requires, before a substantive contact, that you have this form delivered to your consumer. And so by putting the touring agreement language into that document, you could essentially kill two birds with one stone. By getting the brokerage relationship form signed, you're essentially complying with state law and also complying with the settlement requirement of a quote unquote touring agreement. The touring agreement probably was not necessary in South Carolina because we already had rules on this. And in fact, I thought the touring agreement was against South Carolina law because we have customer service and client service. Not all states have that. And you have the right as a consumer to have customer service. And you can get customer service without signing anything. You are not required to sign an agreement to get customer service. Once you and I have an interaction regarding real estate, I am now in customer service relationship with you, and I don't have to sign a document to continue to get customer service. And I thought that this touring agreement was basically eliminating or eroding customer service by requiring you to have to sign a document, setting out commission rates and so forth before showing a house. I was opposed to the document altogether on a legal standpoint in South Carolina, but instead of arguing it from that way, we went together with the Realtors Association and we fixed it by including that language in the brokerage disclosure form, which is required by South Carolina law. From any objective standard, I think we can look at it and say the lawsuit really didn't do anything that was promoted to do in terms of cost savings, commissions, prices of house going down, Realtors Association go away. So I would grade it as a big fat F on that. But now let's look at what was good. And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, but in the end, I think getting rid of guaranteed compensation on the MLS was great for the consumer and probably even better for the real estate agent. Now, Ketchmark's argument was wrong in the beginning, but in the end, I think he fell ass backwards into it. But his argument is not wrong. A listing agent should have nothing to do in determining what a buyer's agent's compensation is. I don't understand how that ever got to be in the first place. Why does a listing agent spend any of its capital, any of its goodwill that is created with its seller, arguing over what a buyer's agent should get paid before the property is even listed? We don't even know what the offer is, and we're already arguing with our seller, telling them what they're going to pay a buyer, and we don't even know what service the buyer is providing. We don't even know what commission the buyer's agent has agreed to accept from a buyer, but yet we are locking everybody into it. The other problem with it I had is that if you're my best friend in the entire world and I want to buy a house and I come to you and you're like, Gary, I'm going to give you the family discount. I'm going to represent you for half. I normally charge X, but I'm going to charge you at half of X. In the past, I wouldn't receive those savings because prior to Sitzer Burnett, the listing agent was going to set out what the commission was. So even though you told me you're willing to take half of X, the bottom line is when it came to the actual closing and the acceptance of a contract, the commission was already set in the MLS. And you would say, well, the seller's agent said they're going to pay me X. It's not coming out of your pocket, so it doesn't matter. Well, I thought I was getting it for half. Well, it doesn't really matter because the seller's paying it anyways. I didn't recognize any savings. That's different today after Sitzer Burnett, because if you're willing to do it for X half of X, now when we go to make an offer, we're only asking for that amount of commission to be paid by the seller. Therefore, we can lower our offer and tell the seller we're lowering our offer. There's no reason that I won't receive that discount. It truly is a better system where each party gets to negotiate the commission. Now, he was way wrong on saying that each side must pay its own way. I don't agree with that. That would have destroyed the economy. That would have destroyed real estate. If the buyer had to pay buyer commission and seller was prohibited from paying it at all, then that would have ruined everything. And there would have been no affordable housing. Minority home buyership would have literally plummeted. Single women's buying power would absolutely have plummeted. It would have destroyed real estate, thus the economy, thus the world economy. So thank God nobody listened to the dumbass on that. But this was a good change. Now, I have talked to a couple of real estate agents about this, and one of the things that they like about it was in the past, you were stuck with whatever the listing agent offered. And rarely did the buyer ever pay the difference in what they agreed to pay you if the listing agent offered less. So when I was talking to one of the top real estate agents that I'm friends with here in town, I asked her about this. And she said back in the day, if she agreed to X to represent her buyer, but the listing agent wasn't going to pay all of X because they're the ones who set the commission in the MLS, then she took it on the chin. She didn't get paid what the buyer had agreed to pay her. And even if you went back to the buyer and say, well, you agreed to X and they're not paying X, the buyer would never pay it. And there was typically no enforcement to make them pay it because of the way that the listing agreements and the buyer representation agreements were set out. Most agents were doing it wrong and they would write zero. You were required to pay me zero if the other side didn't pay me. And so there was no ability to enforce a buyer to pay you. But now she tells me since then, she never has trouble getting the difference. She sits out and works with her buyer, says, this is what my commission rate is. This is what you're going to pay me. We will ask the seller to pay all or some of that. If they pay it all, then you won't have to pay me. If, however, they don't pay me the entire amount, then you'll make the difference up on the settlement statement. And consumers are already aware of this when they sign the contract to buy the property. And so that's negotiated as part of the transaction. And it's not a problem. As a lawyer, I can tell you we're collecting the difference from the buyer on closing statements all the time without argument. It has, in fact, more solidified the buyer's commissions to the buyer's agent. And in fact, in my opinion, it's probably increased it because no longer are you stuck taking only what the listing agent offers. The best part of this is it made this negotiable between the buyer and the seller. Now, I talked to a listing agent, and what the listing agent told me on the seller side is that things are better on the seller side because in the past, he would have to argue with the seller for not only his commission, but the buyer's commission. And yet they don't even know what the offer is. They don't know anything about this buyer's agent, and they're already arguing as to how much they should pay this buyer's agent. And he says, I don't understand why I was using my goodwill and all the capital I've built up with my wonderful presentation for the listing. But then at the end of it, now I have to argue with my client who just now agreed to let me list their house. Now I'm already arguing with them on the first day as to how much they need to pay the buyer's agent. And we don't even know anything about the offer. It's much better now, he says, because now he goes in and says, this is what I get paid to navigate you through this transaction. And this is my commission. And they'll always ask, well, how about the buyer side? Well, we'll talk about that when an offer comes in. We don't know what the buyer will offer. Maybe they'll offer or ask for more or less or nothing. We don't know what they're going to ask for. So we'll wait till that offer comes in and then we'll make that decision. What he's actually told me is his commission on the seller side has gone up by 0.5% because instead of charging what he did prior to Sitzer Burnett, he's gone up to 0.5% because he says it's easier to get that than having to get for both sides. And he's now making more money on the seller side. Said he's making more money than he's ever made in real estate. The bottom line is that agents that understand their value and understand how to explain their value, they have excelled. Those who don't still understand your value or how to explain it have not done any better. The key here is understanding that you do not sell real estate. If you continue to believe that you sell real estate for a living, then you are failing at this. You don't own the property. It's not your house. You didn't build it, so you don't sell anything. What you do is you navigate the transaction. You help navigate from the point of I want to buy a house to post-closing, to I want to list my house for sale to post-closing, and all of the things you do along the way. That is what you do. And when you're able to explain that to a buyer or a seller, no one has any trouble paying you. When they think all you do is put the property on the listing, MLS, and then sign a contract, and that's all you do, or you help them find a house, show them a couple houses, and that's it, they don't want to pay you because you haven't properly explained that you navigate through the transaction. I always look at it like this. We spend a lot of money, time, and effort learning how to do listing presentations. We spend no time at all, very little effort trying to do a buyer presentation. So one of the best things that have come out of Sitzer Burnett is that agents now have to spend equal amount of time understanding and learning how to do a buyer presentation. If you can master the buyer presentation, then you will get a lot more clients. If you still are in the pre-Sitzer Burnett buyer explanation, fumbling through it, don't know how to explain it, don't know how to prove your worth and why you are entitled to compensation and why they need to hire you, then you are failing at this. But I promise you this, when you create a proper buyer presentation that includes what you do for them, how you navigate them through everything from repairs to inspections, addendums, the closing process, the working with the mortgage lender, all of that stuff, then they will recognize why they need to pay you and they won't have problem paying you. The problem has always been in the past, they don't see the value because we've never explained the value. So now understand your worth, understand how to explain what you do for a living. See, what's gone are the days now, in my opinion, of a licensee simply throwing up a sign and getting 10 sales a year. As Gary Keller said, we have moved from a speed to a skills market. And I think we're both still. I think we're still a speed market, but we're still a skills market. And those that have skills that can explain buyer representation, they win. Those who think all you got to do is throw a sign up or throw some marketing out there aren't going to be able to sell. Those agents who want to work hard will excel. Now, let me address, as we conclude on a couple of things here today, I want to address your consternation and your concern about change. I understand change in any professional setting is very disquieting. I don't like change any more than anybody. But changes that are actually moving the industry forward in a client-centric manner are good because it's only going to enhance your standing with the consumer. And this aspect of Sitzer Burnett is good. The ability to negotiate commissions between buyers and sellers and not argue with our seller as to what they're going to have to pay before we even list the property is client-centric, and it's going to make your standing with consumers better. It's the biggest complaint that we hear about the settlement. It's the fact that no commissions and no concessions are in the MLS. So let's talk about these MLS rules. Understand, guys, everyone is on the same playing field. When you all could put commissions and concessions in the MLS, everybody could. Now nobody can do it, so nobody can. So it doesn't change the playing field. You're all in the same level here. For you to act like not being able to put concessions is putting you at a strategic disadvantage is foolish because nobody can. But here's what you need to understand about commissions and why they don't need to be locked in on the MLS. Commissions shouldn't be negotiated. Not everybody needs commission paid. If you're buying $1 million house, you're paying cash. You don't necessarily need commissions to be paid by the seller. Maybe you can make a stronger offer by paying your own commission. This just opens up a world of better and different types of offer for your buyer. It allows you to make stronger offers. And as far as the seller goes, it doesn't matter. And let's talk about this whole MLS concession rule and commission rules. Because everyone's on the same playing field, no one is looking to the MLS for commissions or concessions. It's well settled. Post Sitzer Burnett, nobody can put that on the MLS in any form or fashion. So learned agents don't look to the MLS for any concessions. It doesn't matter. And I continue to hear people saying, we need to be able to put concessions on the MLS. Why? It's not binding. Nothing is binding. So there is no value in placing it on the MLS. The reason commissions were of value prior to Sitzer Burnett was they were binding. Once a real estate agent said, I will pay a buyer's agent X, they were locked into X. They could not change that once you brought an offer. But now, even if you could put concessions on the MLS, nothing is binding. So what does it matter? You could simply go out and put all kind of concessions on the MLS, nothing of which the seller will ever agree to do. So it's worthless. So if I could go to the MLS right now and see that you're willing to pay the following 10 concessions that equal $50,000 in concessions, it doesn't matter, because until the seller agrees to it in contract, it doesn't matter. If your buyer needs a concession, they just need to ask for it. A seller saying, I'm willing to give you $10,000 in closing cost concessions, not binding. You bring them an offer asking for 10 grand in concessions, they simply can say, no, I don't agree to that. So I don't understand why everybody's getting in such an uproar about concessions and commissions being in the MLS, because no one's looking there for it. And if you were to allow it, all this is going to do is allow for duplicitous marketing. Let's say your MLS allows me to put concessions. I would move the most outlandish concessions. I'm pay a concession for commissions. I'll pay a concession for closing costs. I'll pay a commission for repairs. I'll pay a commission for all that. I put exorbitant concessions on there. It wouldn't matter, because I have no intention of ever agreeing to those in any contract. And even if we had a drop-down box that said yes or no, seller would pay, is willing to consider concessions, what listing agent in their right mind would ever put the box no? Think of that for a minute. If you were a listing agent and we had a drop-down box that said yes or no, the seller is willing to entertain concessions, what fool would ever check the box no? I don't even know what your offer is. So why would I check the word no? Every single listing agent would always check the box yes, because sure, I'm always listening to whatever you're asking. Doesn't mean we're going to accept it. Not binding anyway, as I've mentioned a million times. And any listing agent who didn't check the box yes should be fired immediately, because you're an idiot. Let me end by addressing some of this nonsense that I think needs to stop. First and foremost, if your buyer directs you to only show houses where seller is offering concessions or commissions, then you are breaching your fiduciary duty to your client. You have a duty to show all houses. First of all, steering to show houses based on concessions and commissions only. But you do not know what the seller is willing to do. If the seller is not offering concessions and commissions in some marketing advertising piece, you have no way of knowing until you submit that offer as to whether the seller will pay concessions or not, or commissions or not. Secondly, buyers who want or need concessions need to preview every house and simply ask for concessions. If they want it, ask. Just ask. And as a seller, when a seller is asked, will you consider concessions? The seller should always say, we are open to any and all offers. And lastly, please stop calling listing agents and asking them if they're willing to pay commissions and concessions. When you do that, top agents laugh at you because you do not understand what you're doing. In fact, if you were to call me and say, what are you offering in commissions? My response would be 10% in a new car. Whatever I tell you on the phone doesn't matter. And do not go back and say, my buyer needs to know before we show the house. No, they don't. Because again, even though this agent that you just called and told them you didn't know what you're doing by asking whether they're paying, even though this agent says, yes, I'm paying commissions, doesn't mean they're going to pay the commissions. Just because this agent says, no, we're not going to pay any commissions, doesn't mean their seller won't pay commissions if you make a good offer. So you're wasting your time calling a seller, you're violating your fiduciary duty and steering if you refuse to show the house when they say no. And if a seller says no, they're a fool because we don't even know what the offer is. Please, if you get nothing else out of this podcast today, is please stop calling listing agents and asking them, are they paying commissions? Because it doesn't matter unless it's in a contract. It is our 1-year anniversary at Sitzer Burnett. I think there's been some good. I think there's some bad. I don't think it's over, though. I don't think Catchmark's done. I don't think other lawyers are done. I don't think lawyers are going to sit back here and watch that jackass make all this money and not come after you. I do think there is future risk, which we have talked about multiple times on Dish and Dirt, broker to broker. I think it's still a big risk for us. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, these joint ventures that you guys have as real estate companies with attorneys for title or builders have with lenders, we know that those are definitely at risk. I mean, Catchmark has flat out told us that if you are a real estate brokerage and you have a title tie-in or a mortgage tie-in in which you get a financial benefit, he's going to sue you. So continue to do it. I've been preaching to y'all for 3 years. You think I'm wrong? He's already posted on Facebook that he's coming after you. I'm sorry, but when my enemy tells me he's coming after me, I listen to my enemy. Catchmark's your enemy. So go ahead and continue this in the upstate with all of your little agreements with real estate attorneys. Keep doing it and see what happens. I think you're going to start seeing some pushback on these builder contracts as well. We're already seeing some cases that are showing it, these unconscionable provisions. If you think this is done, I think you're fooling yourself. That's our update on Sitzer Burnett. I understand and empathize with everyone's unsettled feelings about it, particularly about concessions. But again, it's a non-issue when we all understand we're all on the same playing field and nothing is binding anymore. And it is better for the market and better for your reputation with the consumer that it be negotiated. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of Dish and Dirt. Please come back again next week. Please share us, like us, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Y'all take care.